few people who are making their way in, but just while they do go ahead and find their seats, I'm pleased that you all were able to come this morning. And my name is Megan Bristow, and it's my pleasure to introduce David Hilliard to you, who's going to be our featured speaker this morning. I'm glad that you're all able to come out and celebrate Black History Month with us. And so just, I don't want to take up any more time from his presentation, but on behalf of the Student Senate and the Success Program and also the Community Service Learning Program, I'd like to introduce David Hilliard to you. And he'll be giving a slide presentation, and then when he's finished with that, he will take question and answer period. So do hold your question.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's start at the beginning. The Black Panther Party started in 1966, and I was one of the founding members. The leadership was Huey Newton, who was that guy right there, who was our Minister of Defense. We had initially these military titles, although we changed later in our development to president, chairman, like that. But Huey Newton was number one. He was the Minister of Defense. Bobby Seale was number two, the chairman of the Black Panther Party. Eldridge Cleaver was the Minister of Information, and I was number four, the Chief of Staff of the Black Panther Party. It's important that you guys understand our Black Panther Party beyond the narrow projection and imagery that we are really stuck with, and that's with the guns and the military images, the images of guys with leather jackets and berets, very menacing. We were much more than that. And to understand us, you have to understand the Black Panther Party organizing on three distinct levels. That was the self-defense level. And why self-defense? Well, let's re-examine history a bit. In 1964, remember we started in 66. In 1964, black people, African Americans, could not have access to restaurants in many places in America, especially the South. We couldn't live in the same hotels. We couldn't drink at the same water fountains with white people. And this is coming out of that whole period of desegregation in the 50s, when we couldn't go to schools with white people, where we had to be marched to the schools accompanied by the National Guard, the United States Army, federal police, just to go to school. As a matter of fact, Condoleezza Rice was one of those young girls during that period that was escorted to school by the National Guard. So this is 1964. In 1965, African Americans could not vote in America. This is in the South, in Mississippi. We're still disenfranchised. So out of that came these freedom movements to register people to vote in the South. You might have studied a bit about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC it's called. Perhaps you certainly do know about the marching across the Pettus Bridge, where the women and kids are being beaten and horses are trampling over them. This is all in America a few years before the Black Panther Party. So 65 was also a period where Malcolm X was assassinated, the founding member, the leader of the Muslims, one of the most militant and one of the most vibrant spokespersons for African Americans during that period of time. This is 65. Also in 1965, we're just beginning to get involved in this war in Vietnam. 1 year later, in 1966, the Black Panther Party emerges. But remember, we emerged out of a period where America was suppressing very basic rights, as I just outlined to you. Women and children are being beaten, you know, in demonstrations. 4 little girls are bombed in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, killed as a result of black folks trying to get very basic rights afforded them. So you must understand the Black Panther Party within that context. We were not just some crazy young people who decided we wanted to pick up guns and march and follow police around. That was not how it happened. That is not how it was. We were engendered. We were truly a self-defense movement, because what you saw happen with Rodney King in Simi Valley some time ago was almost a constant occurrence in America in many black communities. So America was violent. We were responding to America's violence. Our very basic rights were trampled, and we, being youth, wanted to do something about that. And I have to stress that because the Black Panther Party was the youth movement. Martin Luther King was in his 30s. Malcolm X was also in his 30s. We were high school students. We were college students. As a matter of fact, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale founded the Black Panther Party at Merritt College. It was a college campus organization, not a street corner movement. Our organization were the best and brightest of our generation. They were students from Harvard. They were students from Princeton. They were students from UCLA. They were from Stanford. They were from UC Berkeley. They were from San Francisco State. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale were college students when they founded the Black Panther Party. So we came out of the student movement, you see. But our particular thrust, as I said, at that particular moment was self-defense. The other category, remember 3 categories: self-defense early on, 1966, 67. That's what those guns were about. As a matter of fact, the guns were only around about 6 months, because then the law was quickly changed so that we couldn't carry the guns anymore. I have to emphasize too that nobody was ever arrested for carrying those guns because there were no illegalities. We never broke any rules. Huey Newton was a law student, knew the law, would cite the law many times when we trailed the police, and that's what those guns were for. We trailed the police. And when the police was stopping someone, primarily African Americans, writing tickets, we would stand there with our guns and say, we're not here to stop you from carrying out your duty, but we're here to make certain that you don't brutalize somebody in the process of doing that. And we would stand at a reasonable distance with those guns. And it was absolutely legal. Out of 1,800 arrests, 1,800 arrests, no one was ever convicted because we knew the law and we were not breaking the law. But that's short-lived. That's the self-defense phase. Then we organized along reform. This was the reform period, like from 69 through 1970. In the latter 70s, we were doing these reformist programs. The third phase was our survival programs. Let's go back to the reform agenda just a little bit. Bobby Seale ran for mayor of Oakland, California during that period. Elaine Brown ran for city council. This is the early 70s. Because we understood the need to have some vehicle, some organized structure. We were really trying to realize our very basic rights. We understood we could not do that outside the system. As a matter of fact, Huey Newton used to teach us that it's incorrect to even talk about inside or outside the system, that there is no outside the system. The system won't allow you to be outside of it. So the Black Panther Party didn't like the way the system worked, so we moved to transform it so it could work in our interests for those basic rights that most people were already afforded. So we ran Bobby Seale for mayor of Oakland. He got Bobby Seale got, it turned out 70% of voter population, the highest ever. He got something like 47% of the vote. This was a 110-year reign of Republicans in the city of Oakland. Prior to that, no black had ever ran for any position in Oakland. Elaine Brown ran for city council, got 37% of the vote. This is our reform period I'm talking about now. Out of that reform period, we were able to get the first African American, the first Democrat elected in Oakland, California. Lionel Wilson, a judge. We also set the pattern for many other African Americans after that to have leadership of that city, be they mayors or city council people, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Ron Dellums. These were people who were actually coming out of that period where the Black Panther Party had set the style, had set the agenda. Because we're running African Americans in that city, and prior to that happening, there had never been anybody black to oppose the Republican stronghold over the city of Oakland, and that was a 110-year reign. So that's the reform period of our Black Panther Party. The third phase was the survival programs. What are the survival programs? And you'll see many of them when I go through the slides. The survival programs were free breakfast for children. The Black Panther Party initiated free breakfast for children programs in 1968-69. Now 69% of every kid in America enjoys a hot, nutritious meal. We had sickle cell anemia research programs. And sickle cell anemia is a blood disease that were impacting, conflicting black people. And we tested 50,000 African Americans in Oakland for that blood disease. 3 years later, 500,000 African Americans we tested for sickle cell anemia. We were in 47 states. We were in 8 foreign countries. We were a global movement. Those are one of our survival programs. The other survival program is we had a busing for senior program called Seniors Against the Fearful Environment, SAFE. And we were doing un-American things like giving seniors free prescriptions. We were picking them up and taking them to the bank to cash their checks. We were taking them to the store to get their groceries and to do needed things that seniors were not afforded. We had the vans, we pick them up and we'd escort them and take them back and forth to take care of their personal duties. So most of our programs we call survival programs. We had a free shoe program, brand new shoes we gave away. We had a free group food program, 10,000 bags of groceries we would give away in the park, with chicken in every bag, we used to say. We had free health clinics. That's point number 6 of our 10-point program. We want universal health care that's affordable for everybody in America, all minorities. We were calling for universal health care in our 10-point program in 1970. And in every one of those 40 chapters that I mentioned to you, those programs were in existence. Either you had the free breakfast program, the free health clinic, the senior program. Some places had all 3 of them operating simultaneously. But you had to have at least a couple of those programs in operation before we would give you a charter. That's just a brief introduction to our Black Panther Party, really to destroy some of the myths. Because what you generally see about us, if you see this stuff at all, are these guys marching in the Capitol with these guns, and you hear about the rhetoric. You don't hear about what I'm telling you now. What I do to make this really come to life is these slides. That particular picture that you're looking at now with Huey Newton is that self-defense phase that I told you about. And in the question and answer period, we can get a little bit more into that. But I'm going to go through the slides and explain to you as I go along exactly what's happening here. But we start with the self-defense phase. I told you that we were a global movement. That's Stephen Biko, who was a leader of Nelson Mandela's group. We were in constant unity with our African brothers. We worked with Samara Machel, who was the president of Mozambique. That's Nelson Mandela's wife right now, Mrs. Machel. Her husband was the president of Mozambique. So we worked with the Africans because we were a global movement. As a matter of fact, we had an office in North Africa in Algiers, Algeria. We were treated as a government in exile. So we were treated like any government in the world during our Black Panther Party reign. This is the early 60s, later 70s with our organization in North Africa and Algiers, Algeria. This is Huey Newton coming back from the People's Republic of China, and there's a photograph that we'll you'll see with Huey with the second man in charge of the 800 million Chinese, 1 billion now, Zhou Enlai. But this is when Huey had just gotten back from China, and he's at a press conference. That's Huey Newton in the center with the glasses on. That's Elaine Brown next to him, who was the only woman that led our Black Panther Party in its history. This is Huey Newton with Yasser Arafat. Now, why would street corner thugs meet with Yasser Arafat or be having an audience with 800 million Chinese, the second man in charge of that government, if we were thugs and criminals? That flies in the face of that myth. That is absolutely untrue. We were a movement with a 10-point program, with an economic development agenda. Really, we did more for multiculturalism than any organization that came out of the history of civil rights in this country, barring, well, notwithstanding SCLC and Martin Luther King's work with whites and people in the South. Because we were in coalition with Cesar Chavez and his farm workers. We were in coalition with the Asians in Chinatown. We were in coalition with we were the first organization who recognized the gay movement in 1970 when it was not even popular to associate with gays. We recognized the gays and worked with the gay movement. And you will see throughout here that our Black Panther Party had a multicultural agenda. So anyway, as you go through these slides, you will see our party had a very aggressive community outreach initiative, a community outreach program. And most of our programs were serving the community. And they were the programs that I mentioned, and I'll go through them again for you. They were the Free Breakfast for Children program. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we had a free ambulance program. As a matter of fact, PBS just showed the Huey Newton story 1 week ago. It's a documentary, a stage play that's directed by Spike Lee, and the actor is named Roger Guinevere Smith. But PBS has it for 1 year, and they'll be showing it throughout the year. But in that film, you will see many of our programs. The ambulance program, the food programs, most of our survival programs. But they numbered some 19. From the health clinics, the free breakfast for children, the testing for sickle cell anemia, the food programs. And all of our programs were free, by the way. We never charged anything for our programs. People just came and they were given given access to our programs.
The question is, where did you get the funding to finance?
Well, we had a paper that was 178,000 papers per week. So the papers were selling for $1 each. So that was one of the ways that we were able to support the programs. But the programs were also supported by the entertainment community. Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper, Jane Fonda, Shirley MacLaine, Warren Beatty, Richard Pryor. They all supported our Black Panther Party. Ossie Davis, Harry Belafonte. They've supported our programs because people saw something obviously good, a need that was being serviced there, and it was addressing underprivileged mothers. So they would write checks for kids to have hot, nutritious breakfast. So that was one of the things, one of the ways that we raised money. We also raised money by selling our images. This shirt that I have on with 66 is the year that the Black Panther Party started. We are now in a collaboration with a company called Fresh Jive. They make urban streetwear. We have a store in Japan, in Shibuya, where we sell our own images, and we've always marketed ourselves that way with buttons. I talked about the shoes. Although the shoes were a free giveaway program, we also use some of the items to make money, to turn around and give people back the programs that I mentioned. The free busing to prison program was another one that people would send money and support. But there were always contributors, people from the community who would give $1 or 50 cents, come by and I don't have much, but here's $1. but the mainstay was our community newspaper. This is Frederica Newton, who is Huey Newton's widow. Frederica was then 18 years old. She was a student at Wesleyan College, and she'd worked she'd come home at spring break and work in our Black Panther Party's program. She was about 18 years then. Okay.
If you just say okay, we'll change it. We'll show the next one.
Okay. But not okay. So here we go. This is us working with the seniors. See senior power on the button? We were always working with the seniors in our community, as I mentioned earlier. Okay. You can't see it, can you? Yeah. Well, this is the newspaper. This is as Chairman Bobby Seale for mayor, and we would always use our newspapers. We would always use our newspapers as a means for educating. So we'll just try. That's better. Yeah. All right. That's much better. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So this is when we ran Bobby Seale for mayor. Bobby got over 70% voter turnout. About 47% of the vote. Didn't win, but was able to use all of the voter support we got to get the first African American elected, and that's Elaine Brown, sitting next to Bobby Seale, who ran for city council during the same time. Okay. Registering people to vote, that was another one of our programs. Every event we had in the park, rallies, we always registered people to vote. We registered, during the period with Elaine Brown and Bobby Seale, I think 90,000 new voters. All right. Women were very much a part of our organization. In many cases, we're criticized by the feminist movement as being chauvinist, and there's some truth to that. Being sexist, certainly there's some truth to that. But our organization had women right by our side. We used to say that women are not our lesser half or our better half. They're our other half. They hold up 50% of our movement. And women were always there. My wife was the first treasurer of the party. Bobby Seale's wife was there from the beginning. Eldridge Cleaver's wife, Kathleen, was there from the beginning. So the women were always central in our organization, although we certainly did have some of the common problems between the sexes. Okay. This is a rally. Actually, it's not a rally, it's a funeral. It's Guy George Jackson, who was a prolific writer, who wrote a book called Solidaire Brothers and another book, Blood in My Eye. Matter of fact, Angela Davis went to prison involved with the George Jackson situation. Or she went to jail, she didn't get convicted. But this is George Jackson's funeral. 10,000 people showed up. That's on the roof of a store. That's a Safeway store. People couldn't get into church, so they just got a ladder and hoisted and got up on the roof and were outside. We had loudspeakers outside, so they came in attendance for George Jackson's funeral. There's about 10,000 people there.
How is that organized? Is that published in the paper?
Well, the question was, how do we get that many people together? Well, through our paper, through the local newspaper, through media, radio, like that, sure. We were always in the news. So, and that was a different time. I mean, you could actually turn out 10,000 people at a rally, which is unheard of these days unless you got Snoop Dogg or somebody coming to perform. But people would actually come to rallies for the politics. And that's the difference between this generation. And this is not to put your generation down. It's just that, you know, people are really just not tied into politics, and maybe for good reasons. You know, political system has not served us very well. So this is Alameda County. This is also voter registration. We were always constantly in that. Okay. This is when we ran Eldridge Cleaver for president. This is early on. This is 1968. Eldridge Cleaver only got 30,000 votes. That wasn't the point. We were the precursors to the Green Party that you have now. Eldridge ran on the Peace and Freedom Party ticket, and it was to give us a national agenda, where our message was isolated in Oakland, California. By Eldridge coming on the Peace and Freedom Party ticket, we had a national voice, and that's what that was about. And that was during the period when Huey Newton was imprisoned for allegedly shooting one police officer and wounding another, that he was vindicated from because it was proven that the police shot each other and also shot Huey Newton. But we used this occasion to take Huey Newton's trial around the country and was able to get Huey Newton out of prison. Okay. This is Kathleen Cleaver during the self-defense days. You see she was running in the 18th Assembly District, the district that Willie Brown started in. And as a matter of fact, she opposed Willie Brown during that particular period. This is when the police were coming and kicking our doors down. And Huey Newton issued a mandate called Executive Mandate Number 2, that we would have to defend our houses, that we draw the line at the threshold of our doors, because we don't know what and who they are coming and knocking on our doors. It could be some burglar, some robbery, or someone in the process of robbery. So if they don't come with a warrant, everybody is mandated to defend their homes, because the police has no right to come kicking our doors down. And that's what that symbolized with Kathleen Cleaver there. By the way, Kathleen Cleaver is now a law professor. She's at Emory College. She was teaching at Cardozo. She works with Henry Louis Gates and Cornel West and Junius Wilson. She was a fellow at Harvard and graduated from Yale Law School. Now she's a law professor. Okay. These are our kids. We're testing these kids in the park for lead poisoning. And we would do that when we have rallies. Our rallies were not just people showing up and hearing a lot of speeches. They were always events where we would actually bring service to the people programs, always using examples of how we could serve ourselves and showing that if we could address these needs, then there must be something with the system and how they organize their priorities, because they were not doing it. So we were able to do that and also force the system to start doing lead poison testing. And I think that is pretty much done all across America these days. Okay. Sickle cell anemia I told you about, 500,000 in Oakland. Then nationally, with our 40, 50 chapters, we tested 500,000. To the extent that Richard Nixon, who was then president, initiated something called Sickle Cell Anemia Research Education Fund. But that was a result of our testing and putting this into the consciousness of America. Okay. This is another one of our sickle cell anemia posters. Okay. These are our kids. We had one of the finest schools in Oakland. Then Governor Jerry Brown, Willie Brown, who was the speaker, local politicians gave us commendations saying that the Black Panther Party had one of the finest schools in California, if not the world. Our students, our kids have gone to Wesleyan, they've gone to UC Berkeley, they've gone to all of the higher institutions of higher learning. We had a very fine school. Our kids would leave our schools many grade levels ahead of most of the regular schools. As a matter of fact, most of your charter schools are also modeled after Black Panther schools. These are our kids in their little uniforms, doing some recreational stuff. Those are our kids. This is in one of the classes. This is interesting. We didn't have pass-fail criteria in our school. Nobody failed. Youth were in our schools, and they advanced by levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You would have a 12-year-old in the class with somewhat maybe 5 or 6-year-old, because they would be broken down into these various categories, and everybody learned at their own level. So we didn't do that pass-fail situation. And our kids went on to be students at Wesleyan, and they are now CEOs at Sony, as Erica Huggins' daughter Maya is. I think one of her artists is this kid named Little Bow Wow. So, you know, our kids have done very well. This is one of the guys serving the kids in our breakfast program. And remember, we started the breakfast programs. This was not happening in the 70s, or 60s and 70s. Now, almost 70% of every kid in America has a hot, nutritious program. That's the legacy of our Black Panther Party. Okay. Same guy. This is because we were trying to break down that whole struggle around gender. So this guy, Charles Bursey, says, I want to be the first volunteer to serve the kids. I want to cook the food. I want to do the work that's traditionally assigned for women, and I'm going to set the example so other brothers will come and do the work. So Charles Bursey was one of the first men to, to do that role reversal and serve the kids. This little kid here is obviously enjoying his breakfast. These are women preparing the food for the kids. They would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so that the food would be ready for the children on the way to school. This is Geronimo Pratt, just a poster with when Geronimo Pratt was in prison. Many of you, I'm sure, must know who Geronimo Pratt is. He did 27 years in prison, and he was found not guilty. Johnny Cochran took his case, and finally, they eventually got him out of prison. He was framed by an FBI informant and stayed 27 years on a frame-up. This is these guys in the street from that funeral I told you about earlier, George Jackson. These are our kids at the funeral. And George Jackson was an important man. He one of the precursors to the modern day prison movement. And you should read his books. Again, his books are Soledad Brothers and To Die, Blood in My Eye. Okay. That's Huey Newton sitting in the center in full dress. Father Earl Neal, he's a canon now. He's in Washington, D.C. He worked in South Africa, helping to get the democratization of the South Africans and getting Nelson Mandela elected. But now Father Neal is back in Washington, D.C., and he's a canon. It was Father Neal's church where we initiated the free breakfast programs. We always use churches, by the way, and his was the first. This is just a street scene with the people coming out of the church at the funeral. That's George Jackson that I told you about when they were going to trial in Soledad, in San Quentin. Okay? This is, I don't know, in commemoration of me when I was in prison. On my birthday, it seems, and they're having an event and doing something in the park. This is when I was in prison, and it's, you know, get me out. I was convicted by an all-white jury. First, I should tell you, let me tell you a little bit about that. I was involved in a 90-minute gun battle. Police shooting at us, really. One of our members was killed, little Bobby Hutton, 17 years old. I was released in the first week of trial because of no evidence. that I had anything to do except I was in this woman's house where the police were shooting into it. This was 1968 when the judge says that there's no evidence, I can't hold this man, let him, let him go. In 1970, when Huey Newton's in prison, Bobby Seale's in prison, Eldridge Cleaver's in exile, I'm the leader of this global movement, I get tried again on the same charge that was dropped a couple of 3 years early, and tried by an all-white jury and was convicted, not for the shootout with the police, but something like in a battery. I ended up doing 4 years for that. This is while I'm in prison, and we used our newspapers to organize. This is Erica Huggins, whose daughter, Mai Huggins, is now working at Sony, and Erica was working with Angela Davis in one of Angela's programs. And I think Erica is also writing her memoirs. That's Erica's husband, who was killed at UCLA, and that's little Mai Huggins, who now works for Sony. And Erica's looking very lovingly at her daughter. We'll do a couple more of these, and I think you should do question and answers because we kind of getting through. This is when Bobby Seale was in prison. We all went to prison. If we didn't go to prison, which was lucky, we were killed. 28 Panthers were killed. 30 Panthers are still in prison. 7 Panthers are in exile in Cuba. Bobby Seale was vindicated. He and Erica Huggins were both in jail on this charge here for conspiracy, murder, kidnap. And don't let that scare you, because what the government was doing was just concocting these cases. They get informants. They set us up, as in Geronimo Pratt's case. Bobby Seale, a government informant, known informant, put the finger on Bobby Seale. A year later, they go to trial. All charges are dropped because the guy that was the FBI informant actually committed the murder. So all of the Panthers were released from that. And don't take my word for anything I tell you, by the way. Go to our research papers at Stanford. Stanford has our archives, and it's all in the archives. It's in the FBI documents. Huey Newton's dissertation. Huey Newton, by the way, was a PhD from UC Santa Cruz. Huey Newton's dissertation is called The War Against the Panthers, the Repression in America. And most of this stuff that I'm telling you it's in government records. It's in the Freedom of Information files. So I challenge you to do the research. It's all there. We'll do one more and then do question and answers. This is obvious. It's one of our leaflets for a rally for Huey Newton during May Day. So you guys want to do question and answers now? All right, okay. All right.
You mentioned the government being involved in assaulting the Black Panther Party. Could you speak a little bit about J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO and what that was about?
Well, the COINTELPRO means counterintelligence program. And out of over 270 actions against left movements, 72% was against our Black Panther Party. Under Richard Nixon, J. Edgar Hoover, Attorney General Mitchell, we were targeted, the Black Panther Party, as the #1 threat to the internal security of America. We were called terrorists. We were, as I mentioned, killed, 28 of us, driven into exile. There's still 8 people in Cuba who will never come home. Everybody was arrested. 21 of us were arrested in New York for allegedly plotting to blow up Abercrombie and Fitch and Bloomingdale's and Botanical Gardens. Now, what the hell would growing up gardens do in order to advance our struggle, because flowers don't oppress us. So we didn't, you know, that's just how crazy these schemes were. But 21 of our Panthers were arrested for those cockamamie schemes. Never mind you that they had no veracity or validity. That was not the FBI's work. Their work was to discredit us, to destroy our Black Panther Party by anything that they could come up with. And murder, staging kidnaps, poison pen letters, anything that you can imagine was done to us. And you can read this information, again, in Huey Newton's dissertation, War Against the Panthers, or you can just go to Stanford and look through some of the FBI papers. It's all there. It's all there. But we were targeted by the government, then under Richard Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover, to be eliminated by February 1969. And for the most part, they were successful in doing that.
Did somebody play a character of you in the movie?
And which movie is that? Mario Van Peebles movie?
Yeah, Black Panther.
Well, there's this guy who has this sort of rag on his head, Woodbine. He's sort of me and a whole lot of other characters, but I wasn't a strong character in that movie, no. No. That wasn't a very good movie, by the way. It doesn't do us any justice. We're looking to do a documentary, hopefully a miniseries, 8 hours or something like that. It'll take that much to tell our story and to do justice to what we were really about. Okay. 1 minute.
How big was the party, and was Ursula Rucker a member?
Carol Rucker, yes. Carol Rucker, I guess, is that Ursula? Carol Rucker, who went to Stanford, who was a member of our organization, yes, but I'm not sure if Ursula and Carol is the same person. Is she a professor?
Spoken word artist.
I'm not sure.
Or that she was a Black Panther.
Well, that's possible, because we had 47 chapters, and we also had community people. We also had people who worked in our organization who were not African Americans. They were white people who worked in our organization, in our national committees to combat fascism. Matter of fact, when I was drafted in the Black Panther Party, a guy named Richard Aoki, a Japanese guy, came with Huey Newton to draft me. So this Japanese kid was in the party before I joined the Black Panther Party. So we were always a multicultural movement, and I should emphasize that. Because one of the mistakes about us is this black power, this racist kind of thing. That is not who we are. We were not racist. We were California kids. Therefore, our constituents' mothers were Jewish, Latino, Asian, like this room. So we realized that we were the manifestation of what California was about in our movement.
What kind of things are you guys involved in today?
The question is, what are we involved in today? Well, the Huey Newton Foundation initiates tours in the city of Oakland. We do these Black Panther Legacy tours. You should go on our website, blackpanthertours.com. There are 18 sites. I'm also working with Oakland Public Schools to get Black Panther Party as a part of curriculum. They've already included Cesar Chavez's farm workers and the Native Americans. Now they're working on the Panthers for ninth grade curriculum, and I'm a consultant on that project. We also do free book giveaways. We're very strong in our 10-point program. We said we want decent education that exposes to decadence, da-da-da. Well, we give away brand new books. We were always miffed at people who talk about the problem and beat the problem to death and never do anything about solutions. So we say, why Johnny can't read? Well, he can't read because he doesn't have books. So we go to publishers and we get books, and we stand on the corner and give away boxes of brand new books. And you would think that, you know, the school system would understand that. You have teachers and students and parents stopping by taking boxes of books. So we do free book giveaway programs, among other things. But we try to still be relevant in our work as much as we can.
You said, what was it like? You said by the end of '69 that Nixon and Hoover had tried to take you guys completely out of the picture, and you also said that was like a time where you guys had demilitarized a lot, and also had started started reform. What was it like to try to do all that? And it must have.
That's an excellent question. Did you guys hear that? He was saying, what was it like? Because we stepped back from this militarization that I told you about, and we started doing our community service programs. And this is when the repression was most, impactful. It was the greatest, period of repression against our organization. And what was that like? And, it was always frustrating. We lived constantly in a death psyche, because we go out the house, somebody's getting killed. 28 Panthers are dead. So it was like we were going to a funeral a month, and our doors are getting kicked down. The FBI was injecting toxins into our fruit, so if the kids eat it, they would get sick, so that the parents wouldn't send the kids to our breakfast programs. So we were under the most unbelievable kind of oppression, and this is America, this is domestic. But it was a very trying time, very tough, but obviously we survived it. The question is how? Well, we must have been doing something right. We had to be relevant because we fed people, because we gave seniors rides to the banks, because we tested people for blood diseases. The community was outraged and said, no, leave the Panthers alone, and put their arm around us, and that's why I stand here today. But it was a terrible, terrible time, the amount of repression against us. It's been nothing like that since then. It serves the Middle Easterners, the Latinos, other minority groups who are just getting here to take a look at what happened to our Black Panther Party. Use the civil rights movement as a methodology, as a paradigm for how you meet your own challenges, because most of what you're meeting now, if you're Arabic or from the Middle East, if you're Latino, if you're Asian, what you're meeting now has already happened to black folks, and it started happening to us sometime in 1619. So the fact of the matter is, you ought to look at our Black Panther Party as a model for how you meet your challenges, because that's what we were about. And the repression was unrivaled. There's been nothing like this happening to any other organization in the history of this country.
I'd just like to know, what are your thoughts on Black youth today, our culture, and also its infiltration into mainstream popularity?
Well, the question was, how do I relate to the youth of today and their integrating into mainstream popularity? I think that that's absolutely wonderful. It is what we were about. Remember, I said we didn't like the way the system operated, so we wanted to change it so that it served our interests. We always wanted decent jobs. That's our point number one. We wanted housing. We wanted education. That's our point number 5. We were the beginning of the student movements that you have. The ethnic studies programs came out of our Black Panther Party at San Francisco State. So you are doing exactly what we worked for, to have better jobs, to have opportunities in higher institutions of higher learning. Although a lot of this stuff that we fought for has now been, taken back as an affirmative action, and some of the other programs. But that is exactly what you should do. You don't have to do what we did. You don't really have to do the mass demonstrations to get access to colleges or to get jobs. The laws are on the books. People died for that. That's what King and his organization was all about. So yes, you should do everything you can to manifest, the American dream, because that's what our fight was about.
Okay, this sounds like a really obvious, it's going to sound like an obvious answer, but why did the group choose the Panther as the representative?
That's a good question. I think it's like, well, the question was, why did we choose the panther as a symbol? It's a good question. Well, Huey looked around and said, oh, the Republicans have an elephant, and the Democrats have a jackass, and the White Citizens Council have a rooster. So there were these guys in the South called the Lowndes County Freedom Party. They had a panther. And Huey says, why don't we be the Panthers then? The Panthers don't attack anybody unless it's hungry. It's an animal, you know, who only attacks, you know, in its own defense. And we like that symbolism. So we chose that symbol based on that kind of logic. And the fact that everybody has these symbols, you know, the Boston Red Sox, or, you know, all these symbols. So we wanted the panther as our symbol. But that's a very good question. Yeah.
What advice would you give anybody trying to organize today?
The question was, what advice would I give you for trying to organize? The first thing is, get up and do it, and don't expect that you will have hundreds of people following you in your initial challenge. But if the idea, if the goal is worthy, you will prevail. So I wholeheartedly suggest that you again examine our Black Panther Party. We started, me, Bobby, Huey, about 7 people. 3 years later, we're a global movement. So do make these attempts at trying to organize. I think that on these campuses with students, the students should have student body representatives that's reflective of what America is. It shouldn't just be a black group or an Asian group. We got to get beyond identity politics. If you look at what's happening in the world, you see that the people that run the world don't play that race game. They don't care what color you are. All they're interested in is the economy. You know, and then what flag you fly here, we got a lot of flags. Which one you want? So the flag and that attitude of multiculturalism is something that we got to get hip to. That this identity politics is just exactly what the system wants, because it keeps us separated. So by all means, you should organize, and you have power. I think the one message you get out of this Black Panther Party, we were 18, 19, 20 years old, but we were a global movement. And here we are 30 years down to 34 years, and people are still studying our organization. That's because we made an impact. And if we can do it, so can you. So I wholeheartedly recommend that you always should find issues, and you should be aggressive in trying to make a difference. That's what I'm hopeful that you'll do. You know, it's on you. It's your time. It's your generation. And do make challenges and do question authority. That's what we did.
Now there's a lot of discussion, and I come across articles and people making statements about the prison sort of industrial complex. Mm-hmm. And in that, there seems to be a tendency to build lots of prisons, and there tends to be some kind of systematic way that is in operation that many black people end up in these prisons, and many Latino people. Mm-hmm. And even though the crimes that other people might commit are similar crimes, if indeed these are crimes that people commit that get them there, it seems that the racial distribution, that there is a concern for racial identity as far as governmental politics is concerned, because the racial distribution in these prisons is predominantly black and Latino, and it seems to be a tendency for this to increase. What do you think young people should do in terms of strategies or just activism in order to be proactive against this kind of development that we see in our country? And it's nationwide, not just in California.
Well, in order to address the issues of imprisonment, we should all know that at bottom it's economic. I mean, people usually go to prison because they're stealing something, they're robbing something. It's always economics. I mean, crime has an economic basis to it. So if you really want to make a real attempt at trying to keep people out of prison, then I think there has to be a greater emphasis on education, that people should be given greater opportunities to get higher learning so that they can get jobs. People should be given a decent wage so that if they go to work, they're not degraded, working for $5 or $6 an hour. So a lot of this stuff has to do with restructuring of the system as it exists. The priorities are not where we think they should be to address the kind of problems that you talk about. The priorities are locking people up because there's $20,000 per individual that's in those prisons. So somebody's making a lot of money off of the privatization of prisons. That's a big industry. So our goal, our work should be how we figure to redirect that money into community programs, if it's drugs, rehabilitation programs and not prison. If it's young people, juveniles, you don't send 10-year-olds to adult prisons. If they're in prison, you educate them, you rehabilitate them, you don't just get them in there and warehouse them. Prison is a good place to get people concentrated and begin to turn them around. Our Black Panther Party was about that. The guy that went in prison during our day didn't come out with that criminal mentality, because we transformed that criminal mentality into a political operative. That's what that George Jackson guy you saw was all about. That's why he was so dangerous. But if there are no programs in the prisons and there's no real shift in the economy to address these issues, then we're not going to do anything about that. And there's nothing that you can do about it. So it has to be that coming together of the politicians, the government, a shifting a focus of our priorities in terms of money, and then we'll start getting some results. People in prison because they go steal, they rob, and in many cases kill. So those are systemic problems that we have to address by having some shifting of priorities. And that seems not to be the case of many of our leaders these days.
David, last question.
Okay.
You guys obviously were a part of, you spoke of a few minority groups which really were the first to really get the movement started. Do you see nowadays, are you happy with where, or do you think that the minority movement is still focused on where you'd like it to be, and if not, where would you like to see some programs where they use political force to
Well, the question was, do I think that, I guess overall, that, you know, we're satisfied with the end result?
Not necessarily satisfied, but if they're still, obviously, I mean, or, you know, okay.
Yeah. And of course, the answer to that is that there's been a lot of changes, there's been a lot of gains, and there's, in a lot of ways, things are worse than they were during Brown versus Board of Education. With the cuts in affirmative action, jobs, more people in prison, as the lady just said. These are bad times. You can't afford to live in my area because the rents are so high. People are being uprooted out of their communities. So in a lot of ways, things are pretty bad, although there's been some changes. So overall, I don't see a lot going on at the grassroots level, and there should be more of that. I'm looking for new movements to emerge. I don't see that. I don't see an agenda talking about a domestic economy so that we can deal with jobs and people in the street. I do hear a lot of people with this crazy false patriotism, waving flags and talking about a stronger war economy, which is absolutely crazy. I think that your generation ought to be about the business of addressing those issues and saying, where is the domestic economy? Where are we going to put money for education and for health care and for jobs? That's your challenge. And I don't see that happening. All right, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you.